I think the doubters say the United States really is still a hotbed of the entrepreneurial spirit and real inspiration. And I think some of you in the room who joined us on the Atlantic Club trip to Miami found that firsthand. And two of the highlights we visited were two fantastic concepts. One was YardBird, one was Chica. And both of those are the creation of our special peach guest today, John Kunkel, who is one of the United States' most creative and successful restaurant and bar entrepreneurs. He is CEO and founder of the award-winning 50 Eggs Hospitality Group. So as John comes up on stage to join me, let's have a look at what 50 Eggs serves up every day. Well, I hope that gave you guys out there who haven't been to a Chica or YardBird or any of the other 50 Eggs brands a sense of what this guy's created, whatever. And yes, you will have seen London on the list of new international locations, but we'll come on to that in a minute. First, John, let's get a bit of background. Let's talk about your businesses, your restaurants, how you launched, and where you are now. So, how did you get into this? How did you build the 50 Eggs?
Well, I actually started as a line cook when I was 15 years old, believe it or not, and I'm coming up on 52, so I've been in the business my whole life. Had no other family members in the business. It was just one of those things that attracted me from the beginning. Like a lot of the staff that works for us now, it was exciting, it was fun, it was the perfect job for the kid with ADD that wanted to do 9 million things at once, and just really enjoyed the energy of the concept. And over that long period of time working for other people, I literally worked every single job in the industry. And so by the time I went out on my own in my late 20s, I had, this mentality of fake it till you make it. I had designed concepts for other people I probably had no business doing, and written menus that I had no business doing, and took over consulting on bars that I had no business doing, but just really probably had more confidence and brains at that point to be able to get out and do it. But really, as I got into the business, had this mentality of wanting to create experiences, going from fast food, fast casual to ultra fine dining in the time period of getting to work for other people. I wanted to form a company of my own of doing something similar. And that over 22 years has evolved quite a bit, and how we operate. We've expanded and contracted over the years. But I think at the heart of what we do, at the best of what we do, we're an incubator. We create an idea, we kind of push our chips in the middle of the gambling table and prove out that idea, and then we expand. We really look to create concepts that we can expand regionally, globally, and we've been lucky enough to be successful with that.
So where did you start then? What was how did you actually get off the ground with your own company? What was the concept you started with?
My first concept was a bakery cafe in Miami Beach. I had one of the last jobs I had was as a regional manager, because I was trying to have a little work-life balance, and I had been doing nightlife and getting out late. I just gotten married, and I decided I was going to try to have a normal schedule. And I ended up getting a job for kind of a consolidated kind of breakfast lunch concept in Florida. And it was a bit of a light bulb for me because I had not been exposed to fast casual, particularly in the breakfast lunch segment, where I saw a frequency of dinership and a loyalty and almost a recession-proof brand at that time, looking at kind of that check average. And once again, kind of had a lot of luck along the way, but I went and leased my first space and began construction knowing I didn't have enough money, and mortgaged my house, borrowed money from anybody who would ever talk to me, and did all those things you're not supposed to do. Ran up my credit cards, all the things you tell young entrepreneurs not to do. But as we all know, it's a pretty tough barrier to start that business. And luckily enough, I was able to get the doors open. And a couple days later, 9/11 happened in Miami Beach, and or in the States, and obviously all traffic, all plane traffic, all tourism came to a screeching halt. So I went from a small staff of 13 to me and 2 other people, and worked from about 2:30 in the morning baking to about 11 o'clock at night, because surely there was a late evening business at a bakery cafe, right? So we were kind of trying to squeeze everything out of it. And just really at that point, there's no way I was going to give up or fail or be outworked at that point, and really just powered through. So it was running around, carrying muffins to an office or doing a production shoot and then going back and working lunch. So a whole lot of work.
Yeah, but look at you now. I mean, 50 eggs. I mean, what's your turnover now? It's a pretty sizable business.
We're getting there. We're lucky enough to have some wins along the way. I grew one of my fast casual brands, which was a Mexican fast casual, from a single 800 square foot store into about a 15 unit brand that I ended up selling to Ruby Tuesdays in the United States, which kind of took me from, I always describe myself as the guy in the streets in New York moving the ball around the mix. Where's the money? And so fortunately that transaction was able to kind of help create what is today 50 Eggs. And, as we near, we've done about 15 different concepts. We're coming up on 20 stores with 3 concepts expanding globally right now. So it's an exciting time for sure.
And let's talk about those concepts. YardBird, if anybody's been to Miami Beach, probably most people have been to YardBird. It's one of those sort of iconic places. So how's that taken? Because in a sense, it's a chicken concept, but Southern chicken, but it's pretty upscale as well. So how have you created that sense of upscale, which is with what would seem to be a fairly basic product?
Yeah, so interesting story, as all kind of brand creation stories are, but the concept actually came about by what you guys do. It came on a restaurant tour with a group of other restaurant folks. Alice Elliott was taking us around New York. I think we were on our 32nd restaurant. And I had to run to the airport early. And on my way there was one other place I'd read about that I wanted to stop and check out. It was called Buttermilk Channel. It's still there to this day, but it was a Southern restaurant in the middle of Brooklyn. And, I grew up in the southern states, Atlanta, South Carolina. It was where my family was from. And it just kind of struck me that if they're pulling this off in the middle of Brooklyn, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's a trend. There isn't a lot of this out there in this elevated version of kind of Southern American food, chef-driven. And so by the time I got off the plane, I'd start sketching out logos and writing menus and going down the rabbit hole as I do. And the space that YardBird occupies on the beach was, I originally had secured for a burger concept, but it got tied up in permitting. And by the time it came out of permitting, my burger concept now had 15 competitors around me, and it was not the concept to go with. So I had this idea to do Southern American food and create this concept. And the original idea, being in South Beach, which particularly, years ago, 11 years ago now, the land of Red Bull and vodka and bad sushi at the time really was, not really a culinary destination for the most part, which has changed quite a bit. But the idea was to appeal to locals. We wanted to give a lighter, brighter version of the South, not heavier kind of Southern classics. And we had kind of a lot of movie shoots and kind of all the things you would imagine that coming through Miami at that time. So, a lot of local seafood, local vegetables, scratch kitchen, really doing something very chef-driven, but kind of, I like to say, the lighter garden club side of the South. And of course, every time you create a concept, it's what you think it's going to be, and then your customers tell you what it's really going to be. So as I was so concerned about keeping it light and fresh, I look over to a group of 6 models in South Beach wolfing down bacon and mac and cheese and fried chicken my first week. And I'm like, well, I guess this is going to be a little bit different. And so my grandmother's recipe that I ended up putting on the menu for fried chicken was never supposed to be a staple of the menu. The heavier items in the menu we had just because we knew they were crowd favorites, but we really didn't imagine them to kind of gain the life of its own they did. So, over the next 11 years, like every concept we have, it's a matter of, really tweaking, changing, listening to the customer, looking at the market as we jumped out of state, which we'll talk about. That's a whole nother process with your brand,
So you've taken, let's look at the YardBird. I mean, how many sites you've got? You've taken that across the states and particularly to a place like Vegas. We'll talk about Vegas because that is one hell of a destination you've gone to.
Well, leaving Florida, I think, was my first experience with that was with my first concept, Lime. And when I had originally sold to Ruby Tuesdays, I stayed on for a year as a consultant. And I kind of watched all the things you don't want to do when expanding around with a concept. And so it was a great learning lesson. And, we were very thoughtful about, we had gotten a lot of industry recognition and culinary awards for YardBird, and just let's not screw it up, right? Let's not be a chain. Let's not do something that's going to harm the brand or prevent us. And so Las Vegas was not the normal choice, but they came calling, and Las Vegas is under this kind of total changeover of going away from kind of the celebrity chefs that would show up once every 6 months to more chef-driven and what was current. And every casino, every hotel was really looking to kind of compete for a new customer based on their food and beverage offering in addition to entertainment. So we chose the Venetian, which turned out to be a really important relationship in the growth of our company, one that continues on to this day. And, we went in there with a very large space. And again, launching in Vegas, launching in Los Angeles, every city that we've opened in was almost 10 stores. It's really, I describe it, opening in the States is opening in a different country every time, right? Whether it's the permitting and construction process, the customer, how you market, how we tweak the menu, how we change the design to make sure that it is unique to that area and it's not a cookie cutter.
Now, in terms of Vegas, you've got a partnership there. How important is that working with the hotel and casino world?
So our original partners were the Sands, and that ended up being an incredible, pivotal relationship. Sheldon Adelson, before his death, his son-in-law, who was the CFO currently, Patrick Dumont and Rob Goldstein, who run the organization, were just incredibly supportive of this change in food and beverage. And they had done deals with kind of the who's who, the Mario Vitalis and all these guys of the past. And they'd kind of had enough of that, right? They'd had enough of lack of profitability, lack of ownership in the restaurant, where typically a restaurant deal in Las Vegas is your partners are funding all of your CapEx needs. You're the operator, you're expected to make money, and you get paid off the top and the bottom, as we know. Well, most of them kind of had a very large coupon to clip off the top. They never made any money off the bottom, and these restaurants were not profitable for years. I didn't really know that mentality. I knew one way to open a restaurant, which is I look at it as my capital every time. And we look to kind of appeal to the locals, which is a bizarre thing looking at Vegas. And so we really took a very different approach to opening a restaurant. And because of that, we did a lot of things. We became the employer of choice, and we kind of got the best of the best in hospitality, which is a great hospitality town to recruit from. We were able to kind of gain sectors of the business that had not looked at coming in from the residential areas outside of the Strip. We had repeat business in other areas of the business they hadn't seen, and shown them profitability they had not seen in the history of the entire property. And because of that, then ended up funding another 9 concepts with them, and a partnership that continues to this day. But it's really just based on us doing our job and really just trying to be the best partners we can and making them money and treating it, like it's our pocketbook.
Now, your other concept, which we saw when we were in Miami, was Chica, and that has evolved. And one of the things I think a lot of the people on our tour, sort of what stood out for them was that live entertainment. The fact that, the food's fantastic, it's chef-driven, but it's the whole environment, the whole entertainment, the whole experience is core. How do you develop that? I mean, what are you really trying to create? It's not just the food, but how important is that experience? Because we talk a lot about experience in this market.
Well, listen, I think what larger conversation, but I think that is something that's not going away in our dining experience. It was new to me. I had been on the traditional restaurant dining model, going to Vegas, there was a lot of that, right? There was obviously Tao was immensely successful. And if you look at the entertainment-based concepts that had been around previous years, the last 15, 20 years, a lot of those folks came from kind of this nightlife promotions background and then came into food. And so traditionally you had a really fun atmosphere, well lit, good music, okay food, mediocre service, right? Yeah. And so we really looked at it as, one, it was a learning lesson for us to look at that model. And I think, one of the things we pride ourselves on is really just being a student of the industry and looking at the others in the industry. And, Danny Meyer, a friend and mentor of mine from a young age, really, told me something that stuck with me for years. He said, listen, even if it's not something you're doing, want to do, or even want to visit as a customer, you better pay attention to it because your customers are. Yeah, and I think we've always really had that mentality where, I constantly travel. I'm in and out of restaurants because I want to see it, right? And I want to see what customers are responding to. And so, taking nods from that, we opened that traditional model of Chica, which was more restaurant, but we started to see the emergence of casino floor bars and a customer that didn't want to leave to go to a nightclub. You and I maybe aren't going to a nightclub in Vegas, but we do want to stay and have a fun night and have a drink. And so there was a strong convention customer, particularly in the Venetian where we were. And we just saw an opportunity to kind of capitalize around that. And so we started to tweak and created these Chica nights where, we had a little entertainment and music, and it really gained a life of its own. So when we went to open Miami, number one, opening a Latin concept in Miami is a pretty high bar, right? We are essentially opening in Latin America, so you better get it right. And, as we went to do that, we hired Rockwell to come on board, which didn't design the first restaurant, to really imagine a new dining experience. And so there was a stage and a full lighting system, and really imagine more programming around that, not abandoning the high quality of food and service that we knew as our background, but trying to really learn and create a model around this, entertainment-based dining or vibe dining, which I hate the term, but I guess that's what it is these days. And so Miami was born. It took off so well, then we really seemed to find our sweet spot with that model, that we went back to Vegas, closed it down, and remodeled the whole thing to do it that way. So it's really, that is our process, and that's what's a little bit different, because as those who know who create brands, again, it is this constant, looking at it without pride and with a fresh lens, and being able to accept criticism not only from your customers but your internal team of how do you get better, what's wrong with it, how, what's next in the industry, how do you stay relevant. And I think with each of our brands, even YardBird after 11 years, our store in Chicago that's opening today, which I need to be back for tomorrow, is really, it's an evolution of the brand, right? It really continues to grow and be thoughtful about what's next and how do we stay relevant and what's unique.
Well, let's talk about what's next, because as you just already said, opening the states, different cities, like, a whole new market. You're already international in Singapore, and we saw your targets. And one of the reasons you're here, not just because you love us, is that you are looking at this city. So what are your international plans, and why London?
Well, we really focused on, and again, looking at others in the industry, I think, we focused on these kind of gateway cities and what that does to build a brand. Our model, quite frankly, as a company, is to build a brand, and prove out these different markets, create value in the brand, and eventually exit. And really that incubator of creating, operating, and eventually exiting is really what we kind of see ourselves as. Our industry in the world has gotten smaller and smaller. And I think, we see a similar customer in New York, London, and Miami, LA. We see a lot of the same, particularly on the higher end of the market. We see a lot of similarities there. And we also see a connectivity with what people are looking for in a dining experience. So with YardBird in particular, which is the only concept I have a partner on, our partners, TriSpan, are based here in London. So it was always a target from the beginning when we did the transaction with them years ago. We had a minor speed bump in the road called COVID, which slowed down our plans a little bit. But we're back, and we're really excited to be here. And I think just, timing is everything. It's a great time for us to be looking. We don't have a natural competitor in the market for what we do. I think there's a lot of similarities from check average and similar food, but I think for what that unique dining experience is and how we package it, it is unique. So
I think we're always fascinated. We are fascinated to see what you see in London, because in one sense we've come out of COVID. London's still a great city, we all know that, but actually it's been slower coming back. What do you see in London? Is it as strong pre-COVID as? I mean, the exchange rate doesn't hurt.
Right,
does it?
right. Well, the exchange rate is
as
definitely
Marty
not
was
hurting
saying,
at all. But I mean, as we've traveled around the U.S. and back to Asia now for our restaurants, I mean, I see more signs of life here in London than almost any other market.
Really?
So it just seems teeming and ready to explode again, despite kind of the news cycle of all the things going on. You see the customers out. I do think tourism is returning. As the previous speaker was talking about, there's travel plans already lining up for the summer to come back to Europe. The food offering and some of the new projects, as we all know, is in full swing again. And I think, we were lucky enough to be, the handful of groups out of the U.S. that learned from COVID, came out of COVID, expanding, more rapidly than ever, learning from that culturally, learning from that infrastructure-wise, how to expand, how to be lean, what we're attacking, and really kind of sticking to our goals a bit.
But if you're looking at London, you sort of touched on it. Is it a strata of customers? Are you looking at more sort of high spenders? Is that where you play?
Not really. I'd say for YardBird, we're, in this polished casual space, I guess you'd say. We're about $65 US. So not on the high end of things, but we're kind of somewhere in that sweet spot of the middle. I think what we have always tried to do with that concept in particular is create fine dining service standards, scratch quality, chef-driven kitchens, but do it in a relaxed atmosphere, right? Psalms on the floor, great cocktail menu, all these touch points of creativity and chef-driven and mixology-driven, but it's done at a price point that's kind of a great entry point for everybody. We talk constantly, our customer base, which for a lot of us changes throughout the day, is truly 8 to 80. I mean, we have, the younger audience late night, and we've got our early birds. It really is all over the place, particularly with that concept. And because of that, we see, strong lunch, strong dinner. We do a killer brunch, and then we have the ability to kind of do all these wine dinners and late night hospitality events and guest chefs and all this constant programming that we do try to really integrate. So one of the things we learned from not only Singapore, which was a massive learning lesson, which is probably a whole nother seminar, but I think in opening in different markets in the US and opening in Singapore, what it taught us was, be adaptive to the market, be a local, be part of the restaurant community, be part of the local community, get involved in charity, get involved in everything. If the idea is you're going to just plop your brand down in London, put up a flag and walk away, it's a recipe for disaster, right? I don't. Yeah. We're not in the space where it's celebrity driven and you can kind of get away with a lot more, where you're hoping to see a celebrity and you're driving traffic beyond that. We're surviving on kind of the quality of that dining experience, right?
I suppose the question most people in the audience will ask is, are you looking for a partner, or are you doing it yourself? And how do you see the real estate, the property market? Because it is very different.
It is. So, we've gotten into that. This is about my third trip, and we're hoping to have some stuff going out on this trip. But I think looking at Boston, New York, Austin, which are some of our next target markets in the U.S., even Chicago, where we're opening now, is expensive as it sounds here. It's not compared to what we're seeing in other major cities.
Really? Yeah.
And we're talking even Mayfair prices.
Yeah,
so I mean it's quite reasonable, putting aside the strength of the dollar. But truly, I think price per square foot is on par or slightly less than some of the major cities. New York bounced back very quickly and is back to their unreasonable state for
That's
rents.
A whole different thing.
It's a whole different thing, but. Even looking at Boston and even Austin, which kind of exploded with an exodus from California going to Texas, those prices are kind of way, way up there again. But I think, as we look to open here with, quite frankly, Wakuda, Chica, and YardBird, what's the first location for YardBird? Because I do think that, London can hold multiples, but we want to be very thoughtful and kind of do this core flagship. Wakuda and Chica, we'd only do one in the market, and that's really more the model for that.
Yeah. So you're not looking to flood a market, but have enough,
Yeah, we even in the United States, we really had this idea that we didn't want to do multiples in the market. I'm sure down the road that leaves a fill-in for whoever has a next, but we wanted to kind of keep it very unique and special.
But do you have a formula on that? So if you're looking at a market, I mean, how much is feel, how much is data in terms of you're assessing a city as a market, and how much it can take of your brands?
So half and half. I mean, when we went to roll out in the U.S., we kind of used Buxton and all the exit data from our restaurants and average check average. We did a Technomic study to look at where we could drive 10 million or more in sales, as that was a bit of a sweet spot based on that square footage. But then a lot of it is talking to other restaurateurs, spending time in the market, going out to eat, right? It is that gut stuff that we know so well that there is no replacement for, right? And then I think having great broker partners, representatives here, other restaurateurs I've gotten to know over the while, really searching for feedback, because I think, and to answer your first question, we're really open to partnership. We see true value. One of the things that's happened post-COVID is we've had a lot of European and Asian groups looking to bring successful concepts into the U.S., recognizing kind of the challenge to that. And so we've looked to kind of lend our expertise in some of these gateway markets to either be a partner or an operator. And we're kind of open to that idea as we come here. We see true value in that partnership, and particularly a local market understanding. So we're super open to that with all of our brands. And we've got a lot of flexibility in how that looks, whether that's a JV or a license agreement, whatever that is. I've always gotten very creative if it's the right partnership and the right alignment.
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough time for all of us, not just in hospitality. I mean, UK economy is a whole different thing at the moment, but it may get better. But even in the States, you've got your problems. So how optimistic are you about business, and particularly, the restaurant and bar sector?
Very. I mean, we've seen an incredible surge and really a resilience to kind of the news cycle that you hear. The luxury end of the market, the high end of the market, where I guess Chica's on the edge of that at 75, and we're at 95 at dinner, and then Wakuda, which is our highest end concept, which
are Japanese.
It's a high-end Japanese with one of the top chefs in the world, Tetsuya Wakuda. The main dining room's at about $250 average check, with our omakase at almost $1,000 a head. You can't get in. I mean, it's become, tell us what's more expensive and tell us you can't get in, and it becomes the thing that you want. It really is.
We found that in Miami, actually.
It is quite fascinating in those major cities, and it's very different outside of those major cities, obviously. But I think within the major cities, we are seeing kind of the high end of the market surging. People are still going out to eat. They want to go out to eat. They appreciate being social and being out more than ever before globally. And so we've just seen a great resurgence that doesn't seem to be slowing down.
Yeah. But it's interesting, the industry's out as well and being social as well. So everybody's out here, which is good. We're also going to Austin next year for Atlantic Club as well, so hopefully you'll be open then. So,
I hope so. Yeah, we're working on it.
We'll come and see you. But anyway, Johnny, although he's got to fly back, he is around for dinner. So if you've got any questions, don't all rush, but he will be around. John, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
you.
Really,
really exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, brother. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
John Kunkel, ladies and gentlemen.